Today we're looking at the idea of keyframing. Keyframing allows us to create basic animations in Adobe Premiere Pro. When we're working on our edits, whether we are working with an image or a video, we can use keyframes. Most keyframes are controlled either in the effect controls for that specific clip or on our timeline. Today we're going to focus on using our effect controls. I want to put my image into my effect control window. So I double click the image that's on my timeline. Then I'm going up to my source monitor and clicking the effect control tab. Notice in the effect control tab, I have a layer that says motion, and under that layer, several different options for the motion or movement, sizing, scaling, and rotation of that specific image that I've double clicked on my timeline. I also have options under opacity and time remapping. Right now, we want to focus only on using the motion area. Notice when I click motion, a box appears around my image. That is called a bounding box. There are handles or anchor points on each side of the image. These can be used to help with your keyframing and motion of the image. Be careful not to smush your image or put it out of proportion or scale due to the way that you ultimately move it or size it on the screen. My image right now has letterbox black bars above it and below. If I wanted to scale this image slowly to fill my screen, I could use keyframing and my scale option. With that same image selected in my timeline, in the effect control panel, I'm going to find where it says scale. When I click on scale, the bounding box remains in place, showing me that the image is selected still. My timeline is represented in the effect controls the same way it's represented below in my timeline panel as my sequence. Notice if I drag the playhead in my sequence, the playhead is also being dragged in the effect control. This is because it is the same playhead that is moving back and forth. It's just showing you in the effect controls for keyframing. I want the image to start at the size it is right now. I'm going to drag my playhead all the way back to the beginning of the clip. To start a keyframe, I find that's what it's called. I find the stopwatch on the layer of the option I want to keyframe. When I hover over it, notice it says toggle animation. If I click that stopwatch, a keyframe appears where the playhead is set in the effect control. Notice a small diamond now is in the playhead area on the timeline in that layer. My scale of the image right now is at the size it was imported. If I want the image to slowly scale up and fill the screen as the playhead moves, I'm going to drag the playhead to the end of the clip, and now I'm going to hover over the number for scale, click and hold my cursor and drag to the right, which increases the size of the image. If you look here in the timeline, in the effect control, you'll see that automatically a keyframe was added. What this is telling Adobe is that I want the image to stop resizing at this point in the clip. Because I only have two keyframes, one beginning the image and one at the end of the image, it's telling Adobe that I want the program to figure out how quickly it needs to resize the image as the clip plays. So if I pull my playhead back and I press the spacebar or play, I can see the image is slowly resizing as the playhead moves through time. Again, this is because Adobe automatically placed that second keyframe once I chose to resize the image. Adobe will not create a second keyframe if I don't make a change to the layer in the effect control panel. I can also choose to start the keyframe or resizing of the image at a different point in the clip. To clear my keyframes, I'm going to press the toggle animation or stopwatch again. Notice it asks me, do I want to delete the keyframes? Okay. I want the image to stay the same size and begin scaling about 6 seconds into the clip. To do this, I'm going to move my playhead to the point at which I want the scaling to start. I'm going to press the toggle animation for the keyframe so that I can set the image to the size I want it to begin. Then I'm going to drag my playhead 1 small second over, and I'm going to now set another keyframe by pressing the Add or Remove keyframe. I haven't changed the size of my image yet, but that's because I want to make sure Adobe understands I want the image to be at 100% scale until the 6-second mark where it's going to start to resize. So I click the Add keyframe, and notice now I have 2 keyframes appearing in the timeline in my effect controls. Now I'm going to drag the playhead all the way to the end of that clip again, and I'm going to resize the image so that Adobe again will set its own keyframe. Remember, the reason Adobe is setting its own keyframe here is because I dragged the playhead and I adjusted the size of the scale. I had to set my own keyframe before because I changed nothing in the layer, which means that Adobe had nothing to understand what I wanted. So now if we watch, what we should see is that the image stays the same size for that first 6 seconds because I haven't set a keyframe changing it. This first keyframe is keeping that 100% scale. The second keyframe starts the movement of the image to grow in size. And notice the last keyframe is now going to be where the clip ends at the resize that I asked for Adobe to create. Any of your options in the effect control can have keyframing. If I wanted the image to have a Ken Burns effect or move slowly right to left on the screen, I could click Position. I could move the image whichever direction I wanted it to begin and get the image set. I can then press the toggle animation to begin the keyframe, drag my playhead over to the point at which I'd want the image to stop moving, which is at about 13 seconds. I don't want to stop at the very end because I would like for there to be a still image before the transition. Now I'm going to click Position again under Motion, and I'm going to drag the image to the point I want it to stop. Remember, I've already moved my playhead so that Adobe knows where I want this keyframe to go. As I drag the image to the right, a line appears from the anchor point, demonstrating to me where the image is moving. It's showing me that the image is going to move in a horizontal movement across the screen from left to right. When I release the image, again, notice that Adobe has created a keyframe in my effect control. If I drag the playhead backward and I press play, the image is slowly panning from left to right due to the keyframe that I set and Adobe set for me once I moved the image. If I wanted the image to stop moving earlier, I can drag that keyframe from the effect control layer timeline to the point I want it to stop. Now the image will move quickly at the beginning of the clip and freeze because I've set the keyframe earlier in the timeline.